Good afternoon. Today, I'm going to take a little bit of time to sort of pause and reflect on where we've been over the course of this semester, particularly since we're at the midterm. Some of you have already wrapped up your midterm. Some of you might still be finishing it or working on it a little bit. But no matter where you are, here are some things I want you to think about for the second half of the semester. Okay, and I'm going to go through each one of these in a little bit more detail, but I'll just read them off first. And some of this is in part a response to the questions I get. And I get these questions every semester, particularly in 101. And it's a great question. And that one is, how can I improve? How can I improve in the second half of the term? And that answer to that question really is individual. There's different things that each one of us could do to improve writing or time management or organizational skills, and that takes time. It takes time and practice. But there's some basic things that you can also do in the second half of the term to improve your writing, to improve your experience of doing these papers and these assignments as we head to the second half of this fall semester. And these 4 things I think are a good place to start. So let me read these off. And then after I read them, I'm just going to talk about each one individually. And some of these are also geared towards the 4th paper, the one that comes after the midterm here, where you're going to have more sources that you'll have to use. So that's where some of this I hope will come in handy, particularly as you start thinking ahead to that assignment. So first of all, make sure you read the directions. I know I keep repeating that, and it sounds really simplistic, but I'll tell you, it'll help you not only in your other classes, but also in other experiences you might have in your career and in life in general. So we'll talk more about that in a second. Second of all, please read the comments on the papers when I send them back to you. And again, I'll talk more about that in a second also in terms of what we'll be doing with those comments, particularly as we get into November. Third, very important, and also very, very important for any other class you're taking where you're asked to do assignments, writing assignments, be very important for English 102 if you're taking that class next semester. And that, again, is to cite all of your sources. Don't plagiarize anything. Don't take something from an outside source, rearrange some words, and then turn it in as your own, because there's a lot of problems associated with that. So I'll talk more about that in a second. And then lastly, ask for help. Never be afraid or embarrassed to ask questions about an assignment, to ask questions about a paper that you're working on. The more questions you can ask, the better you will do. And the more you can reach out, whether it's over email, which is fine, if you want to do a Zoom meeting with me, no matter what it is that you need help with, please reach out. I'm happy to answer your questions. As you've, I hope, noticed, I do answer very promptly to any queries, to any questions about assignments. So I would encourage you to do that. If you've been doing that all semester already, keep doing that in the second half of the term, because I think that'll help to solve a lot of problems and also to answer a lot of questions. But let me just briefly go through these. And again, I'm gearing this also not only towards what we've done here at the midterm, but also what we're going to do next in the second half of the semester. So first of all, again, I know it sounds simplistic. It sounds like something you were told in grammar school, but sometimes those lessons that we got that many years ago are actually still pretty relevant. Read the directions. The first thing to do when you get an assignment, or when you see on Blackboard that I've posted information on a new assignment, is go into Blackboard, go under the writing assignment reading tab, and read the directions over. Read them slowly. Take a look at them. If you're reading them on your tablet or on your computer, try to highlight the main ideas, start thinking about it as soon as you get the assignment. Don't wait until the last minute to read the directions over. That's not going to serve you well. The other thing I should mention in terms of reading over directions is that the reason I'll assign things 2 weeks in advance is that I want you to take your time on the assignment. If you're in the habit of trying to work on assignments 2 days before the assignments due, the day of, that strategy doesn't really work well, particularly for the kind of papers we're going to do in the second half of the semester. You need to give yourself more time. Now, I know that's difficult, especially under the current circumstances. Managing schoolwork and family responsibilities and work responsibilities is always difficult, but it's magnified under the circumstances that we're all experiencing together now. But still, to the best of your ability, try to parcel out your assignments. So even if you just spend 10 minutes a day on a paper, maybe a week before it's due, write a paragraph a day, read a little bit of the directions, and then write 2 paragraphs, and then let it sit and come back to it and send me questions on it. That will serve you better. And I say that as someone who I was never able to procrastinate on papers. I would get too anxious. If I left it to the last minute, I never did well. I only tried that once or twice, as I've probably mentioned before, in college, I think once in grad school, and it just didn't work for me. I always need to start things ahead of time. I need to work slowly on them, and I, I would recommend trying that. So if you find that in the first half of the semester you're doing a lot of your assignments really close to the deadline, see if there's some way you can start them a little bit earlier. Now, again, you have other classes and you have other responsibilities, so you can't be constantly working on these essays. But if you find that you're only working on them the day before or the day of, give yourself more time, because I think you're going to find if you give yourself more time, if you have more time to read over the assignment, if you have more time to send it to me for commentary, you're going to do better and you're going to feel more confident about the work that you're doing. Now, I mentioned that particularly for paper 4, after we come out of the midterm here, we'll be working on an assignment that does ask you to use a resource from the Harper Library databases. And I'm going to make another video where I show you how to do that and how to work on it. And that's a bit of a preview for what you might do not only in an English 102 class next semester, but also in other classes that you might even have this semester where they're asking you to do additional outside research. So with an assignment like we're going to be getting into after the midterm, you really do need to take your time. You don't want to try to go into the library database and be looking up resources the day of an assignment, the day that it's due or the day before. You do need more time to kind of evaluate the resources and decide how to incorporate them into the paper that we're going to do here after the midterm. So again, read over those directions. As soon as you see an announcement that I post on Blackboard, as soon as you have time to look at those directions, do that first, because that'll give you a good grounding as to what you're being asked to do, okay? Now for the second one, please make sure you read over the comments on the papers. One of the other things we're going to do here in the second half of the term, as I've mentioned to a few of you, when you turned in these earlier papers, is we are going to have a revision assignment. Initially, I was going to do it as part of the midterm, which is how I normally do it. For an in-person class, I normally do the revision assignment as a midterm in-class writing. Obviously, we can't do that since we're not on campus, so I've shifted it over. We're going to do that later in November. It'll come towards the middle of the month after we get through paper number 4. And so part of the goal of the midterm, as I mentioned, was to get you to look back at not only the earlier readings that we did, but also to look back at the commentary on the papers that you received. So that's why I asked you to pick one of those authors and to write that letter to one of them. So the other thing that I'd ask you to do is when you get a paper back from me, whether it's a Google doc where I've put comments on it, or whether it's a Word doc that I've emailed back to you, read through my comments. If you don't see the comments and you aren't seeing them on the docs, I need to know that too, because I do spend a lot of time reading your papers and putting in commentary and corrections. So if you get a paper back and you don't see the comments, or you can't open the file, or there's some other issue, then make sure you contact me, because at this point, particularly in the semester, we've already done 3 papers and 3 quizzes, and so all of those you've gotten back, you've gotten your comments on them. So please let me know if you have any questions. Now again, when we get into the middle of November, that's when you're really going to have to go back and take a look at those earlier assignments and decide which one you may want to revise based on my comments and based on your own experience as a writer, because you're going to be much more experienced in the middle of November than you were back in August, for example, when you did that first paper. So keep that in mind. And like I said, if you ever have any questions on the comments that I've been sending back to you on the papers, or if you can't read them, or if you've had trouble opening the docs, please let me know. And thanks to those of you that have written me back and said, oh, can you help me? I had a little trouble reading it, or I had a little trouble opening those comments. One other reminder I want to mention again here at the middle of the semester is, because if you're using Microsoft Word, and you've sent me a file in Microsoft Word, I would have sent it back to you with the track changes. So you'll see all the commentary in the margins and at the end of the paper. So it's also important to read those on your computer or your laptop. Microsoft Word doesn't open correctly typically on your phone, and sometimes not on your tablet either. So if you get a paper back from me and you open it and you say, wait a minute, I don't see any comments in here, make sure you're on your laptop, because again, whatever device you're using needs to have Microsoft Word on it in order to read those comments. And again, if that's not working, we can always switch over to Google Docs if you've had any trouble with that, okay? So next thing, please make sure that you cite all of your sources. This is critical, particularly as we get into the second half of the semester. You know, as I just mentioned, the 4th paper is going to involve some research through the Harper Library database. And I'm going to be doing a video showing you how to use that. It's easy, and you're going to need it for your other classes, particularly as you go forward, not only here at Harper, but at other schools if you're transferring after you finish up your 2 years here. So you have to make sure you're citing things correctly. That's why at the bottom of all the directions I post, there's always that reminder about MLA formatting. So it's also important that you not plagiarize. Now, that means if your first instinct when you get a writing assignment is to go online and to look for additional information on that particular topic, particularly for these papers where I haven't yet asked you to find any other additional information other than what I've given you in the readings, don't do that. You've got to be giving me your papers, your ideas, your opinions. I don't want an opinion from some internet source in your paper that's been spliced in or cut and pasted and then rearranged and changed. These should be your papers. And again, if they're flawed and there's problems with them in terms of mistakes or errors or structural problems, as long as they're your papers, you're going to have the opportunity to revise it anyway. If, however, you've taken material and source material from an online source, I'm going to give the paper an F. Okay, that's standard. It's department policy. It's Harper policy. You can't pass in work that you've taken from another source, rearrange things, and then pass it in as your own. It's dishonest, and it goes against our Harper policies, honesty policy, our policies regarding doing coursework correctly and effectively. So if you take a look at the syllabus, I go into details on that. But the simple solution to that third thing on my list here is just don't plagiarize. Don't take material from other sources and pass it in, because as I've said before, I will give it an F. And you're then entering choppy, dangerous waters, because you may also end up getting an F in the course for doing that. It's really not a good path to go down. If you're struggling on a paper, as I've said before, reach out and ask me for help. I'm happy to help you. I'm happy to give you suggestions. Even if all you've got is a paragraph of your paper, I will read it over and I will give you as much help as I possibly can. So please keep that in mind, particularly as we get into the second half of the term and we're going to do a paper where you're going to have to use sources from the library databases, and I'm going to show you how to do that. But just remember, turn in your work. It doesn't have to be perfect. Do the best that you can do, and I can help you hopefully improve on what you're doing and improve your confidence in your writing. But don't take stuff from sources, particularly because a lot of the stuff you're going to find online, to be perfectly honest, is not very good. It's a lot of information that is either inaccurate or is not very detailed, and certainly is not effective or appropriate for a college level paper. Okay, so keep that in mind. Now, lastly, most important maybe of just about everything else on this list, because everything else I just mentioned ties back into this last one, ask for help. We're going through very difficult times now, and that's become almost a cliche. You hear everyone saying that, you hear everyone on the news saying that, you hear everyone probably in your family, your immediate friends, and community members saying we're in difficult times. Very few of you, I would wager, even know anyone that lived through an earlier pandemic. I did, because I grew up with people that were born in the early 20th century who had survived that pandemic of 1918. My great-grandmother did. My grandmother had memories of living through it. It was part of what their generation experienced. You folks, however, are a lot younger than I am, and so you are going through times that are really, as has been said by many people, unprecedented, at least for the last 100 years, and you probably haven't even been around people who had experienced things like what we're experiencing now, whether that was, again, the pandemic of 1918 or the Great Depression or World War II, you name it, any other crisis of the 20th century. So you got to give yourself a break too. You've got to ask for help. You got to reach out when you need help. We're all going through difficult times right now. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel depressed. It's okay to feel anxious, and it's okay to be honest about that and to say, I'm having a little bit of a struggle right now. And I need some help and support. Please don't hesitate to ask for help if you're struggling. I'm happy to help. And I hope I can do the best I can for you going on here in the second half of the semester to support you and to help you do the best that you can in the class. So when I say reach out for help, I'm serious about that. All it takes is a quick email. If you're struggling with an assignment, you don't have to go into detail. If you're going through a rough spot, if you just want to reach out and ask for help with an assignment, a little extra time maybe to finish it, that's okay. It's okay to ask for that. And I'm happy to talk with you, and I'm happy to help you through. And I want to stress that as we get into the second half of the semester, which I want you to have a good experience here too as we get into the second part. We're going to do some very cool readings. We're going to do more on Jamila Woods, who you wrote about here for the midterm. We're going to read John Porcelino, who's an amazing Chicago poet and musician and cartoonist. We're going to read some of his work. We're going to read work by Sandra Cisneros, the great Chicago writer. We're going to read a little bit more from Gwendolyn Brooks. So we have a lot of cool stuff coming up here in the second half of the semester. So that's just a little bit of a midterm reflection. I want to thank you all for the hard work you've been doing. These are tough times, as I've said. I can't even imagine, and I think I've said this before in these videos. I was talking to one of my best friends, and we were classmates together in a course just like this in the fall of 1991 when we were first-year college students. And my friend and I are both college professors now. And we had a conversation over text a couple days ago saying, can you imagine what it would have been like when we were taking our first-year English and our first-year courses if we were doing them online, if we'd had to do that in the fall of 1991. And we both agreed, as two folks that struggled to adjust to college to begin with, that it would have been a real challenge. I can't even imagine it. So thank you for the work that you're doing, for reaching out for help, for doing the best you can under these circumstances that are so bizarre, right? But let's keep going together. I know that's also become kind of a cliche, but I think it's important. We're going to keep working together. We're going to get through the second half of the semester. And again, there's a lot to look forward to, not just in terms of the class, but I know some of you maybe don't like the colder weather as much, but the leaves look beautiful right now. It's a little chilly, but you got that nice fall weather here before we get into Chicago or Chicago area winter. So take some time for yourself. Take some time to hang out with friends and family safely with your mask on. And your pets, don't push yourself too much either. Do your work as best you can, but again, ask for help, and I'll be happy to do the best I can as we get into the second half of the semester and finish things up. So if you have any questions, email me. I'll be back again with some more details on our next assignment. But for now, as I said, try to get outside a little bit with your mask on, get some fresh air, enjoy the nice, beautiful fall colors that we're privileged to have here in Illinois, and I will talk to you later.